Chapter 2 will be covering the approaches to reading and writing. So the quote for this chapter is, "Write, rewrite, when not writing or rewriting, read. I know of no shortcuts." And this is a quote by Larry King. So the questions asked for this chapter: how do you approach reading and writing? That's 1. 2, do you follow a personal reading process? And 3, how about a writing process? What are the steps that you follow? So think about these things and then write them down. Alright, so the learning outcomes for this chapter, the first one is understanding the reading process. So what are the steps of the reading process? The second one, understanding the writing process. So what are the steps of the writing process? 3, using reading and writing strategies. And 4, improving vocabulary skills. With the final one, understanding the structure of a textbook. Because it is important to know how to read a textbook as a college student, as those are generally what you'll be reading. So, learning outcome number 1, understanding the reading process. So reading a magazine versus reading a textbook. So again, these are two totally different types of reading material. Therefore, you have to approach the reading of the two differently. So when you're reading a magazine, you are generally reading for enjoyment, and this is different than when you read a textbook, which its aim is to gain knowledge. So generally, students will read textbooks because they are trying to learn something, so they're wanting to gain knowledge. And when you're reading a textbook, it's important to read actively. So what does reading actively mean? So be prepared to discuss that. The reading process helps you to pace yourself and to read actively. So this is something you can do in order to read actively as well as pacing yourself. So active reading involves close, thoughtful reading. So again, you want to make sure that you do close, thoughtful reading. So again, the key word with that is you want to make sure that you focus. The next thing, you want to follow a reading process. Also, you want to annotate, take notes, and summarize, which we discussed in the previous chapters. So the last 3 things, annotating, note-taking, as well as summarizing, they are going to keep you engaged and help you understand all the key parts of any given reading. So the next thing we have is more of learning outcome 1. So you have the steps of the reading process. So the first step is pre-reading, second, reading, rereading, and then reflecting. So pre-reading is to first become familiar with the text and establish the starting point for the reading. So this can be the title, this can be the biography, backstory, any of that. That is pre-reading. So that's going to get you familiar with the text before you actually start reading it. Then the next thing is your reading. So you read the assignment once to get a basic understanding of the text, and then use reading strategies such as annotating, outlining, note-taking, summarizing, those types of things you need to do while you're reading. Again, this will help you be actively involved in your reading. So remember, actively involved means you are actually doing something outside of just reading. The next thing is rereading. So you want to make sure that you reread the text and analyze its parts as many times as needed until you have a clear understanding of the text's key concepts and ideas. So again, if after you read something you still do not understand, you want to make sure that you reread to get the main points out of it, and also to help you analyze the text. And then finally, you have reflecting. So reflecting on your reading is where you ask yourself some questions. So how would you summarize the text? What is it that you have learned? What questions do you have about the material? How has this reading changed or expanded what it is that you know about the topic? So that's what reflecting is. It's a series of questions that you need to answer in order to let you know whether you understood the reading or did not. Figure 2.1, which is in the bottom right-hand corner, that is the reading process just visually. So if you can see, you'll start off with rereading, and then if you follow the green arrows, those are the next steps. So you'll go from rereading to actually reading, rereading, and then reflecting. Now, if you see the grayed out arrows, which are dashed and go counterclockwise, you start with reflecting. So that's once you get to the end. If you still cannot answer the questions, which are, what have I learned? If you cannot answer what you've learned, what questions do you have about the material? If you have no questions because you couldn't even understand to begin to formulate a question, then you need to go backwards after reflecting. How has this reading changed or expanded what you knew about the topic? Since no one knows everything about everything, if you can say that something has not expanded to your knowledge or changed your knowledge, then you probably don't understand it, and it's best to go back and reread. Then from there, if you still don't understand, you might need to go to the very beginning, which is rereading, and establish another starting point. So these are the steps of the reading process, visually as well as defined. More of learning outcome number 1, so other reading processes. So you have KWL, so that stands for what I know, what I want to know, and then what I learned. So the chart on the bottom, which is figure 2.1, is the KWL chart. So you'll have whatever your topic is on the line that says topic. Then after that, the K, identify what it is that you know. The W is identify what it is that you want to know. And then the L, what it is that I've learned. So if you do this, this will help you figure out what a reading is, the information from a reading that you just read. Now on the right hand side, that's going to be SQ3R. And this is a thorough reading process in which you survey, that's what the S stands for, question, which is what the Q stands for, and then you have the 3 R's, which is read, recite, and review. So with the survey, this is where you kind of skim it. So you look at the title, see what kind of main things stand out at you, such as headings, graphics. You look at the first and last paragraphs, and this is going to help you get a general idea of the text. Then from there, you have questions. So during this step, you're going to ask yourself questions that you hope the text will answer about the topic. So for example, you look at the title of something, and then you may have questions. So for example, if we take the title of this chapter, which is Approaches to Reading and Writing. So, some possible questions. What is an effective approach to reading and writing? Are there steps to approaching reading and writing? The word process. So that lets you know there will be steps. So that's a good question. From there, you're going to actually read it. And this is, again, when you're reading, you want to make sure you take careful notes and reread the parts that are challenging. So if you don't understand something, you don't just skip over it. Reread it for comprehension. And then from there you recite, and at the end of each page, section, or chapter, this is where you state out loud what it is that you've learned. Now, it's not mandatory that you do this out loud, but it does help. This can involve answering the 5 W's and the H, so the who, the what, the when, where, why, and the how. So that can help you to recite, and then reread as necessary. And then finally, you have review. So this is after reading. You want to study your notes, and then go back and answer the questions from the Q. This is going to help you to be able to summarize the text and then see how well you understood it. Learning outcome 2, understanding the writing process. So writing is much less imposing when you approach it as a process rather than an end product. So basically what this means is if you think of your writing as a process, so I have to start with step 1 on through all the other steps, rather than, okay, I've got to figure out how to write 10 pages. It's a whole lot easier, and it will help you because it becomes a learning tool when you do it as a process rather than just attacking it all as 10 pages. Approaching your writing as a process, this is going to break your writing up into smaller steps. So if you start with your pre-writing, you'll just do those parts. You'll just do that part and then you'll move on to the next. So once you do that, break it into steps, it's going to help you be able to do a better job and better understand what you're doing because it's in smaller steps rather than one big chunk of writing. When you approach your writing as a process, this helps it to become more manageable for you as a writer. Again, you're not doing so much at one time. And 2, since it's in steps, it's easier for you to articulate and connect to other parts. So you want to make sure that you break it, you use a process, because that's going to help it to become more manageable. It also helps you manage your time wisely. So again, if you know that you have 10 pages and you say, okay, well today I'm going to work on just my pre-writing, and then tomorrow I'll work on my writing and then my editing and so on and so forth. That's going to be a lot easier than just saying, okay, I have 3 days to go through all of these steps, and it's not going to be very manageable because 1, it's not broken up into steps, 2, it's not in manageable parts, and then 3, you didn't manage your time wisely. And then finally, when writing to share your learning or for certain personal forms, you want to make sure that you use the writing process. Again, when you're showing what you've learned, you can start with a quick outline, a quick list. You can have dialogue, whatever you want to do. But you do that, and then even if you are doing things for personal forms, let's say you are sending a text message. It makes sense to type out your message, read it to make sure it makes sense, and then hit send. So again, it's a process. So you are writing, then you are editing or revising as needed, and then publishing. That's when you send it. So again, whether it is more complicated forms such as papers or personal forms such as a text message, you still need to go through the writing process, and you don't even think that you're doing it, but you are. So this is the writing process. So again, the first thing is going to be pre-writing. This is going to start the process. So you do this by first selecting a topic. So again, if you remember from chapter 1, we have the word subject and topic. They are interchangeable and they are both related to ideas. So again, you have subject and topic. They are related to ideas because again, if you do not have a subject or a topic, you cannot go anywhere. So again, if you were to be asked, which traits deals with having a subject or selecting a topic, is going to be ideas. Again, you want to collect details about it and then find a focus or thesis to direct your writing. So when it says find a focus about it, that means find something specific that you want to discuss. It makes no sense to have this big, huge topic that you want to discuss when you just need to narrow that down and find something specific to focus on. Your writing, this is when you write your first draft. So you're going to use your pre-writing as a plan, as a general plan or a general guide. So basically, if you do an outline, the outline is going to be the pre-write for what you are going to write for the first draft. So use this as a guide to make sure that you included everything you needed and you had the details that you needed. So an outline, a quick list, these are ways that you can that are pre-writes to help you with your actual first draft. So then after you write your first draft, you want to make sure that it is revised. So careful review of your first draft, you can have a classmate read it as well. So what is it called when you have a classmate read your paper and help you revise it? Be prepared to answer that. Change any parts that need to be clear and add any missing information. Again, whenever your classmate reads your paper, they don't know what you're trying to say because it's not their paper. So add anything that's missing and then take suggestions as long as it's a suggestion that makes sense. And the next thing you have is editing, and this is where you edit your revised paper and you're checking for style, grammar, punctuation, and spelling errors. So again, it's not enough to get a revision and not change or correct anything. That's not editing. So if you get a revision, then you want to make sure that you make those corrections. That's editing. And then the last step is publishing. So this is where you prepare your writing to be shared with your instructor, your peers, or another audience. So again, after you edit, you don't just keep it, you're going to publish it. So whether that's submitting it or actually giving a presentation, that is the publishing. And then on the right-hand side, figure 2.3, this is just the writing process visually as well. So you have pre-writing, down to writing, follow the red arrows, and then back up to revising, down to editing, and then to publishing. Now you would go backwards if necessary if you got to, let's say, the editing part, and then something still didn't make sense. Go back to the revision and see if you missed something, or see if maybe you didn't need to revise that part. So it goes forwards and it also goes counterclockwise, just like the reading process. So the next thing we have is reasons that you want to write. So there are different reasons for why you want to write, the different forms and different purposes. So if you remember the STRAP strategy, forms is another word for type, and then you have the purpose. So for writing to share what it is that you've learned, the types of forms that you would do this, so to share what you've learned, is with summaries, informational essays, where you're just sharing information. For summaries, you are discussing the main points of something, so you are sharing what it is that you have learned. So that's where you write to share what you've learned. So the purpose of these are to show your understanding of a subject that you're studying. So again, to inform, to persuade, those are going to be purposes if you were looking at it in that way. A personal writing, so these forms or types are going to be personal essays, blog postings, short stories, and plays. Now their purpose is to share your personal thoughts, feelings, and creativity with others. So if we were going to look at purpose, what would be the purpose of personal writing? So be prepared to answer that. The next thing we have is learning outcome 3, and that's using reading and writing strategies. So when you're writing about your reading, you are bringing the ideas in the text into focus. So again, when you've read something and you're writing about what it is that you've read, you're bringing your ideas about that topic into focus. So the most essential reading strategies are going to involve writing. So some things that you can do, which we kind of discussed, but this kind of defines them and outlines them a little bit further. So the first thing you have is annotating. Annotating means to add annotating means to add comments or make notes in the text. So that's what you're going to do when you are annotating. You are adding comments or making notes in the text. So some things that you can do, or what does this look like? This is where you write questions in the margins, you underline and highlight important points, define new terms because you do not want to skip words you don't understand, and then make connections to other parts within the reading. So again, write questions in the margins, underline and highlight important points, define new terms, make connections to other parts. The next thing you have is note taking. This helps you to focus on your reading material and understand it more fully. So this makes summarizing your text and studying for exams much easier. So how does note taking make studying for exams much easier? Be able to discuss that. One way that it's easier is that you are just getting the main points. So you're not having to study every single thing that was discussed or every single thing you wrote. You are only discussing the main parts within a summary. So it's easier to remember just what you need, not everything. You want to make sure that you use your own words as much as possible, recording only key points and details. Consider whether something is bolded, whether it's italicized, whether there are graphics and captions as well as the main text. Also, use abbreviations and symbols to help you save time. So when you're taking notes, a lot of times you cannot keep up with as fast as someone is talking. Use abbreviations, and on the slide you'll see examples of abbreviations. You also want to make sure that you use an organization system. Now, you want to have an organization system that you understand. What's an organization system that works best for me may not work best for you. So have a system of organization, but make sure it's something that you understand. The next thing, which we've kind of been discussing already, is summarizing. And this is where you identify and explain the most important ideas of the text. Again, a summary is only the most important parts of a text. This tells you how well you understand the information. So the purpose of a summary is to tell you how well you actually understand the information. So it's vital to do this. Again, at the end of a chapter, the end of a page, the end of a whole reading. So you want to make sure you summarize to help you reflect on how well you understood. Personal responses, they reveal your feelings about a reading and they help you to think critically about the reading. The goal is to take an informed stance on the text. So usually for opinion pieces where you are charged with choosing a side or feeling a way about something, the goal is to take an informed stance of that text. Learning outcome 4, improving vocabulary skills. So when you come across unfamiliar words, you don't want to just skip them because that can impede the meaning of the whole sentence. So you want to make sure that you define a word that you don't know. And also, the more you see and define and use words that you are not familiar with, the better your reading gets and the better your writing gets. So define words you don't know. So some ways that you can define words that you are not familiar with. You can use a dictionary, of course. You can have a hands dictionary or you can use an online dictionary. So there are so many ways to get the definition of something. You can Google it. Just put in definition and the word. You can use Google for it. You can get dictionary apps. There are a lot of ways to do it, so there's no reason you should be skipping words if you don't understand them. Another thing you can use is context clues. Context clues are looking for the clues in the words and ideas around them. So again, it's important that you understand what context clues are. Another thing you can do, you can look at word parts. This is going to help you to be able to figure out what a word means. So many words in our language are made up of a combination of these parts. So types of words, you have the root, the prefix, and the suffix. So make sure that you know what those three things are. So what is a root word, what is a prefix, and what is a suffix? Make sure you understand that. So also with context clues, there are different types of context clues. So you have cause and effects, definition, comparison and contrast, words in a series, synonyms, antonyms, and then tone of the text. So this also will help you figure out context clues, which are going to help you figure out what a word means using the words around it. All right, so learning outcome 5, understanding the structure of a textbook. So you have different parts of a textbook. You'll have the title page, the copyright page, which gives you the publishing information, the table of contents that tells you what chapters are in the book, as well as any appendix and anything else. You have the preface, the foreword, and or the introduction. You've got the actual body, the appendix, the glossary, the reference, and then the index. Now, parts of a chapter, because of course the chapter is the smaller, the textbook is the whole thing. So you have the chapter title, learning outcomes, special opening text, key terms. You also have the main headings, subheadings, graphics, photographs, and captions. Also, you have side notes, summaries, as well as resources. So we're going to take a look at your actual textbook and then see the different parts of it. Alright, so this is the textbook for the course. And in the textbook, we'll look at the title page. So this is the title page of the textbook. So it gives you the information you need, so Fusion, and then it gives you the authors. And then from there, we've got the copyright page. So that's this page. So it gives you all of the information you need as far as when this book was copywritten, and then all the identifying information that you need. So let's see if we can zoom into this. So here on this side. So you'll see when the book was copywritten. So there was the original version in 2008, 2012, 2016. So that's all the copywritten information. From there, you also have the table of contents, and that's the page you're looking at now. So this tells you what chapters are in the book. So a lot of books will color code them and separate them. And then you have the preface, forward, and all those other things. Now let's go ahead and look at the chapter. So we can get to, this is chapter 2, so let's just go to chapter 2. And as you can see, I was highlighting different points of the book, things that I thought were important. So let's go to chapter 2 and look at the things that are here. All right, so this is chapter 2. So you have the chapter title, which is here, Approaches to Reading and Writing. You've got Learning Outcomes, and those are here in the corner, Learning Outcomes. And then special opening text. So this is things like the quote and then the introductory chapters. Let's see if I can get this where you can see it. So introductory chapters, key terms, so we have those here too. Main headings, so if you see the main heading here, Learning Outcome 1, Understanding the Reading Process, those are main terms. You also have things such as graphics, so it kind of helps you to keep focus on what you're reading, so you just got a set of books there to let you know this is about reading. You have charts, so the KWL chart that we discussed earlier, so you have different types of charts. So there are a lot of things that you need to understand as far as parts of a textbook and parts of a textbook chapter. Alright, so then the next thing we have is a review. So question number 1, what are the steps in the writing process? So be able to identify the steps of the writing process. 2, what does annotating a text involve? So when you are annotating a text, what are the things that you are doing? 3, what does it mean to summarize a text? So when you're summarizing a text, what does that mean and what is the purpose of summarizing? What are context clues? So I'm not asking you for the specific types of context clues, but what is a context clue? Number 5, what role do headings serve in academic text? So be able to answer all of these questions in order to take the lecture quiz.